And to talk about all of the week's news, our panel, Peggy Noonan is a Wall Street Journal columnist and a CBS News contributor. David Ignatius is a columnist for The Washington Post. April Ryan is the Washington bureau chief for National Urban Radio. And we welcome to the broadcast executive editor of National Review, Reihan Salam, and Peggy. Well, Reihan, I'll start with you. So we've had the same-sex marriage decision. Is there anything Republicans can do about this?
Well, I think that you're already seeing a cleavage with two candidates, Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio, saying that, they object to the decision, but they also do not favor, let's say, a constitutional amendment that would essentially overturn the decision. Whereas you have a number of other Republicans doing precisely the opposite. So this is continuing to be an issue. Some have argued that, hey, now the Supreme Court has decided this is no longer going to be something dividing Republicans, and I don't think that's quite true.
Peggy, should Republicans be talking about this at length on the stump as they run for president?
They will be talking about it because they'll be asked about it. So certainly in the next few weeks, that is true. I think they're also going to have to address the question of there is a cleavage between those who say, all right, this is settled, or appears to be settled, and those who say, no, a constitutional amendment is possible. Look, is it possible? We know where public opinion is and where it is going. It is not possible. So are Republicans going to go off chasing a rabbit they'll never be able to catch? More fruitfully, I think Republicans can look at the real issue mentioned in all the dissents at SCOTUS, the real issue of religious liberty, whether or not it is going to be under siege, and whether those who disagree with the court's ruling on same-sex marriage are going to come under great pressure to get with the program. Do you know what I mean? That'll be important.
Yeah. April, just thinking about the pace of change here, President Obama, when he came into office, was opposed to same-sex marriage. Yeah. Then after this ruling, and we'll show a picture of it, the White House bathed in rainbow colors.
How about that?
Talk about that. Talk about that evolution.
Well, first of all, when President Obama came into the White House, there were only 2 states that allowed for same-sex marriages. So, and how many years later, and now with the Supreme Court decision, you have 50 states. But, and I want to take you to Friday. President Obama was writing his eulogy Friday morning when he received a call. And the person who called him said, there is a decision from the Supreme Court. And he said, well, what's the number? And they said 5-4. And they played with him. He didn't know who, which side, and he said, well, who won? And he said, this has been a good week when he found out. So they embraced it. This is a president who said, I believe, that I have to be a president for all America. He's the one who really, a couple of years ago, about 2 years ago, really started the ball rolling even more. So this White House is embracing that, particularly the first African-American president. We were a nation at one time who did not allow for couples of different races to be married. So we are moving, and this White House is embracing it.
So in the executive branch, they're teasing the president on the telephone. David, I want to talk about the judicial branch. I mean, the dissents in the same-sex marriage case, Justice Scalia said that I would hide my head in a bag if he had written the opinion supporting this. Real cleavage on the Supreme Court.
There are sharp divisions. They were clear on both the equality of marriage issue and on the Affordable Care Act. In that dissent, Justice Scalia called the majority opinion pure applesauce and uses the phrase jiggery pokery. We're still not sure what that means.
Yeah, right. I think it's a children's game.
At the same time that this is obviously a divided court, it has a Chief Justice in John Roberts who we saw clearly this week, is trying to steer a middle course. He was referred to by my colleague Ruth Marcus in a column this morning as our national umpire. And it's clear that he does see a role in leading the court, finding a center line, being true to his principles, but still thinking about the court as an institution that shapes the country. And clearly, on these 2 decisions, you could feel America turn a little bit on its axis. It'll be a different country for these decisions. And you have a Chief Justice who obviously wants to make sure that doesn't do damage to the way the country works.
Peggy, conservatives think Roberts has left them, abandoned them. He was supposed to be one of them.
Well, if you read his dissent in the same-sex marriage case, boy, was that a conservative dissent. I have never seen dissents in my lifetime as sharp and in a way as accusatory and full of warning as those dissents were. These were justices of the U.S. Supreme Court saying to other justices, you are essentially usurping democracy. You're acting as legislators, not as judges, and you're a bunch of elitists from the edges of America. You all went to Yale and Harvard. You know nothing about America. There isn't a single evangelical on this court. Whoa, that is sharp stuff.
Two things I'll note, though, about Chief Justice Roberts. The first is that in the healthcare decision, it's worth noting that though conservatives were very disappointed in the decision, he also introduced an interesting possibility. He did not say we are deferring to the executive branch on what the Affordable Care Act means. Rather, he said, we look to the purpose of the law, we look to the intentions behind the law, and this is what the law means. That introduces a fascinating possibility that conservatives will be able to challenge a wide range of regulatory decisions by executive branch agencies, where there's a tension between what an administrative agency has said and the intention of the law. That is going to be a very powerful weapon, potentially, for people who want to restrain government in the future.
On same-sex marriage, we're going to see litigation for many, many years, particularly when it comes to the religious community and the religious right. Because, I mean, you still have that issue. If I believe in my faith that says there's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, and if I am a cake baker and I don't want to bake a cake for your wedding ceremony, if I have any part in the ceremony that you want to pay me to do something for, that is going to go into litigation. And the problem is that we as a nation, we have moved forward. I mean, I remember, during the Bush years, the time that President Bush tried to run for office, and one of the reasons why he received a large number of the black vote then, 11% versus 9% the first time, he said, he basically put Jesus and God on the ballot, same-sex marriage. So we've come a long way as a nation. We're more majority now believing that there should be same-sex marriage, but you still have that minority in the church that, we're not going to do this.
Rayhan, I want to switch to the Affordable Care Act quickly. I talked to Paul Ryan and said, one of the things people have said is there really wasn't a Republican alternative. What do you think about that? A Republican alternative to Obamacare. Did they have one ready to go if the Supreme Court had gone the other way?
This is a real struggle because this is a case that Republican lawmakers saw coming down the pike a long way off. Paul Ryan was trying to build a coalition, as he did on Medicare reform earlier. He's managed to wrangle Republicans together on many different issues, but this is one where he's been working for years. Since 2009, he has had his own vision for an alternative to Obamacare, and yet he has failed to build that consensus because you still have some people who believe that, look, you can only beat Obamacare, you can only replace it if you have another plan for access to coverage. And there are others who are saying, no, we can go back to the status quo, and even if it means that many people are going to lose their coverage, that's okay. We need to stand up for principle. And I think that Ryan is in a very tough position, and he needs more allies if he's going to advance that vision. But he failed to do that this time around, and it was very consequential.